G'day, it's Fran Davidson from Psychic and Energy Work. Before I start this video on space clearings, I'm going to apologise for the fact that you may hear tin banging or windows sort of thumping a bit from time to time during this video. The reason for that is that it's a reasonably windy day here in Sydney. It's the second cooler day of the year, so winter's really starting. The joy of having a windy soundtrack to this video is that it accompanies the topic of space clearings really well. Space clearings are interesting. They can be highly multifaceted. What I mean by that is that often people can think of space clearings as only dealing with ghosts. That's just not the case. It can be the case, but usually it's not. Space clearing involves the energy worker, in the broadest sense, space clearings involve the energy worker going into a space to read on it, clear it of stuck, outdated or imbalanced energies, and to realign it on a more spiritual level. So within that can involve definitely ghosts, whether they're spirit that the current occupiers of that space know or not. It can involve the vibrations, the issues, the dynamics of previous tenants or passers-by. It can involve the current tenants' issues or visitors' issues, dynamics. It can also involve vibrations that are coming off furniture, out of the walls, even out of the land that the space is located in. So space clearings can involve all sorts of stuff. Again, what's interesting is that often clients can see them as more along the lines of ghost busting, for example, where the energy worker comes in and deals with the ghosts and gets rid of them for you, and that's it. On one level, that's what it can be, and at that level, a space clearing can still be incredibly effective. However, I'd argue that in the world of energy, everything is linked. There's what's known as the law of attraction, and therefore the law of reflection, what we ourselves emanate with, the thoughts and feelings, issues, stucknesses that we are carrying, not necessarily consciously, tend to attract the vibes that we then experience in our day-to-day reality. None of that has to be seen as negative. It's just that's an energetic fact in the intuitive realm. So in terms of ghost busting or only dealing with spaces from a ghost busting sense, so what do I mean by that? In no way am I trying to make that term a derogatory term. However, just like any other form of energy work, you can approach space clearings from a number of angles. There is the angle that, yes, deals more just with spirit, and sometimes people can treat or perform a space clearing along the lines of, shall we say, I go in there, I just deal with the spirit in a way that doesn't involve the client, doesn't link it to why it is there for the client, why it's presenting to the client. And I clear the energy, and I may very successfully clear that energy, and yet later, often, those dynamics come back, because at the end of the day, on the world of energy, or in the world of energy, everything is linked. Things happen for a reason, and they don't just happen because a ghost is there as a completely separate fact from the people who are experiencing the dynamics that are playing out. And so in the purest sense, and on the broadest, most holistic level, I'd argue, space clearings are about explaining what's in a space, what's going on, and why it is presenting for the client who's involved. Because invariably, in all the time that I've been doing them, and that's since the 90s, 1990, yeah, of course, space clearing, whatever pops up in a space, it has a synchronicity to something that the client themselves is having to deal with or work through. And so everything can be explained by way of, why is this happening in your space right now? How is it linking to what you're being asked by life to learn and grow through and perhaps step into as a spiritual platform, as a spiritual dynamic all over again? So space clearings are amazing Do they start at the front door? No, not necessarily. Space clearings can start even before you get to the house from a practitioner's perspective. They can need to start out in a garden, front, back or side. They can need to start at the back of the house rather than the front of the house where you first step in as the practitioner. There's no one way that a space clearing goes down as a consistent process. The only thing consistent about a space clearing, in my opinion, is that it is there to help clients rebalance and heal not only the space but also life in general, because again, everything is linked in the world of energy. When we relate with others, which of course we do all the time in all sorts of ways, over time vibes and dynamics can build up between us. They needn't be negative, but they just build up. It's a bit like dusting your shelves or dusting your furniture. From time to time, spaces can be cleared. Yeah, and spaces need to be cleared, not because they're necessarily bad as a vibration or a state, but just things build up, things get stale. And in some spaces that gets louder than others from time to time. So in a sense, a space clearing involves reading, can involve working with spirit. If not spirit, then other vibrations which can be explained in a way that helps the client make sense of reality as it is unfolding for him or her at the time. Space clearings are also often almost mini lessons in intuitive development, not because the practitioner wants that to occur that way, but because again, everything can be explained. There can be stuff in the walls, there can be stuff in the furniture, there can be old vibes for inherited or second-hand objects, even just from old objects. So space clearing can happen on many, many levels. Like every other form of energy work, I would argue that this area is also, or should also be, about spiritual balance, spiritual health, and therefore the energetic state around and within a person before, during and after it's done. Space clearings, strictly speaking, only need to be done once if they're done properly. There is no need to keep going back to a place unless, of course, it has loads of stuff to clear. Space clearings can take a couple of moments. They can also take hours. It depends on the space. Usually anywhere between 1 to 2, maybe 3 hours. But again, depending on the people who are there, depending also whether they fish for things after they've been cleared, because the world of energy is such that energy moves. It doesn't necessarily get wiped out. Issues can get resolved and therefore cleared, but that doesn't necessarily mean energies do, which means that if we think about energies that have been in our space too much after a clearing, they can actually reconnect with us. Not necessarily on the same level, but they can come back. So the result of a clearing ideally is balance. That depends on the client, of course, but always a clearing can be done, should be done in a way that really helps the current occupier's life progress more smoothly and again more harmoniously once that clearing's been done. All sorts of issues, all sorts of questions can be resolved and addressed in a clearing. Sometimes it can involve, shall we say, spirit that the person is aware of, knows. Sometimes absolute strangers. There's just so many ways to cut the cake, and that's what makes clearings really, really interesting. So I hope I've helped with this very brief rundown about space clearings. To the degree that you're not sure as to whether or not to progress with a clearing, check your gut. Always check your gut. Always insist that the practitioner is there to help you understand what you need or want to understand. No piece of psychic and energy work should be a one-way download. Every piece of psychic and energy work can be conducted in a way that involves the client as they need to be involved and as they wish to be involved, and in a way that embraces their needs to learn, grow, evolve and heal however they choose to. So all the very best, and thank you very much for watching this video.